What's up?
Our research question was, can the group design and create a respirator mask that can successfully pass an Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA for short, sanctioned qualitative fit test? An OSHA fit test is a test that measures leakage and functionality of a respirator mask by using a non-harmful chemical with a strong odor. This chemical is released in a room with a mask and its wearer and tests if the wearer can smell the chemical or not. Our group based our project on whether or not the mask could stop odor from apple cider vinegar.
Before our group decided specifically what we wanted our project to be on, there were two major things that we decided to focus on beforehand. The first was the rubric. We wanted to make sure that the rubric we made was both challenging while still being fair to the group, and second was relevance. We all feel that in a class like L2K, it's very easy to do a lot of projects on very specific fields that only certain groups of people are going to benefit from, and this is something that we wanted to be extremely conscious of while doing our project. We didn't want it to be only useful to this group of people or this group of people or that group of people. We wanted it to be something that could potentially be universal, if need be. So that's something we tried to keep in mind throughout this entire process. And going back to the rubric, this is the first time in this class that we've been given the opportunity to kind of have a say in what we get graded on, and that's obviously a lot of power. Um, but depending on who a group consists of and what they think of themselves and their abilities and what they think of their topic, this could very easily be skewed to either too easy or too hard. If a group thinks very highly of themselves, they can set a lot of goals that they aren't really actually capable of getting to. Um, and contrastly, if a group doesn't think much of themselves, they can set goals that they can easily overcome in you know minutes. And at that point, you're tipping the scale either way. We felt would be very harmful. So that's something we also tried to be very aware of before we even decided what our topic was. Going into phase zero, we decided to do our topic. We decided that our topic would be respirators. We felt this was a good choice because of the coronavirus stuff that's going on, like something that's at the forefront of everyone's minds. Well, it's not gonna come out and like cure the virus. It is something that could still potentially be helpful for that sort of thing. Phase zero as a whole went very well for us. The literature review gave us a lot of sources and gave us a lot of insight into you know how long respirators have been around, like almost 2,000 years. Most respirators in the last 100 years have followed very similar build styles and schematics and designs, and ours is no different. It's very similar to most respirators that have been widely used in the last 100 years. So it's not going to break conventions or anything, but at the very least, we know it's going to work. Well, we think it's going to work, anyways. The first major obstacle that we had was coming up with the rubric again. Like I said, we had trouble at first finding a balance between what we could actually do and what would have been just unfair. If we wanted to get a 4, we felt that it should be challenging, but at the same time, we didn't know really where to draw the line when we first started. To the point where some of the things we were trying to fit into the level 4 category were things that we couldn't realistically achieve with this project. Thankfully, that did get taken care of, but that did eat up a pretty large amount of our time during this phase of the project. As far as our schedule goes and our procedure goes, they were both pretty ordinary. We felt that we had enough time to get what we wanted done. We didn't feel like we were going to have to rush around that much for most sections of this project. We felt pretty confident that we could get it done in the time we had. As far as our procedure goes, we wanted to base our testing on the guidelines that have been set out by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and our procedure is very heavily based on that. Essentially, a testee would go into a room with our respirator on, and they would be exposed to a multitude of chemicals, and just whether or not they could smell or taste the chemicals that were in there would determine how well the respirator worked. And obviously, the less they detected, the better that would reflect on our design. It's pretty standard, but it's effective, so we felt pretty safe going with it. As far as other things, the communication during this phase was also very good. Group members were quick to respond to each other, and like it never really became a problem. Like one person not knowing what to do never really became a problem during this phase. And while communication would become a problem in later phases, in this one it just never really showed itself. In this one, everyone was still fresh with the idea and really, still on board with it in a way that kind of enticed them to be there for one another. So yeah, thank you.
It was now phase 1 of this project, and in this phase we began researching several things. including how masks work and how masks are designed. In this phase, we had to decide on a design for our mask. In the end, our group chose to do a folding design. This is because the mask could be easily assembled, and based on the limitations that we found from 3D printing, it would be easiest to make the mask this way. Going on to the limitations of 3D printing, there are several. So first of all, we found out that 3D printing a mask wouldn't really work. This is because there can be several holes in the design of the mask, which would allow for different air particles to pass through, which would be detrimental to the function of the mask. Second of all, 3D printing isn't very accurate, and it would be hard to design a mask that would fit everyone. And since the plastic that is 3D printed is not flexible, this would also add to the fact that a 3D printed mask generally wouldn't be good. Because of this, we decide to 3D print the frame of the mask and cover it with some cloth. Finally, we had to change the calendar. Due to the pandemic, it would be harder to meet up with the group. Because of this, we would arrange for different days that we would go and do things such as deliver parts to each other and have conferences so that we could decide what we were going to do next.
Phase 2 was a significant improvement from Phase 1 in terms of cooperation between group members and progress on the overall project. Some of the progress that was made in this phase includes the acquisition of materials, for example, the filters from Amazon, which would allow the mask to filter out odor particles, as well as virus or bacteria. The polypropylene layer, which was repurposed from reusable bags, which would also help with the filtering process, as well as elastic bands, which would allow the mask to be constricted to the face. After we acquired our materials, we began designing our mask. We have a diagram of a piece that we created in Tinkercad for the base layer of our mask that we plan to 3D print via the software. That will be shown in a little bit. Finally, we began construction on the mask using the polypropylene layer, the elastic bands, as well as the filter. However, we did not have the base layer yet, so we could not fully complete construction. The only real struggle that the group encountered was the inability to stick to the schedule we created in Phase 0. Otherwise, this was arguably the best phase for the group with the most communication, the most progress. The following is a visual of the original base layer that we created in Tinkercad. It had creases so that it could fold in on itself very easily. It was created to scale. It was later refined in Phase 3. Phase 3 marks the end of the project as well as the construction, testing, and implementation of our prototype. A lot of progress was made in this phase, including the finishing of printing the mask base. At first, it was actually redesigned in order to make it fit the shape of the mask better, which we'll be seeing in a little bit. As well as the group organized a drop-off to get this part to finish construction and testing. The actual construction of the mask was completed. The finished product will be shown as well. Testing of the product was also completed with the OSHA fit test. And finally, we drew conclusions about the project and our assignment. The main struggle that we faced in this phase of the project was that communication between group members was poor yet again. Only between certain group members though, because as stated, a few of us were able to coordinate that drop-off to pick up the 3D printed base layer. However, some of us did not cooperate or were silent throughout the entire process. And then here are some visuals for this stage of the project. You can see here that we redesigned the base layer from what it looked like in Phase 2. First, we have the actual construction of the mask via sewing, which you can see in this video. The mask is being sewn. The mask parts, including the base, are being sewn together. Next, we have the actual mask itself. You can see the blue polypropylene layer, which again was repurposed from bags. The inner red 3D printed structural layer, as well as the little elastic bands on the sides. In a little bit, you'll see me trying to fit in the PM 2.5 filter, which filters 2.5 micrometer particles. You can see here. Obviously, it's kind of hard to do with one hand, but there is a pocket that it will fit into and can be replaced. So this is what the mask looks like as well, in case you missed it from the last one. However, let me just explain what happened earlier. I sprayed the room again with the apple cider vinegar and smelled to test if there was an odor. And fortunately, there was not an odor, which means that the mask was performing as intended, and we in fact passed the OSHA fit test. So, to answer our research question, yes, it is possible for us to create a mask that can successfully pass an OSHA sanctioned qualitative fit test.
Overall, our mask was a success. However, there were some strengths and weaknesses. The first strength is that our mask successfully filtered air. This was the main goal for our project, and because of this, we succeeded in creating a mask. The next strength is that 3D printing allows us to create easy changes to the mask. If we were to create variations in size or shape, we'd easily be able to use 3D modeling software to change it. The next strength is that in some of the models we reused plastic bags from stores. This, by recycling materials, we both reduce cost and we can help the environment. However, there are some weaknesses. The first being that 3D printing is inefficient, and because of this, it would be really hard to mass produce masks. This means that we would not be able to keep up with the need of, say, a hospital when they need masks. The next, and arguably the worst drawback, is that it was hard to breathe in. Because of the layers and the way it was constructed, filtering required it to be pretty dense, and because of this, it was hard to get air through when you're breathing. It's not impossible, however, this does make it harder to breathe in order to be able to filter out the materials in the air.
Throughout this project, our group came across several triumphs as well as some challenges. I found that using a printer for making the mask was extremely helpful, as it allowed me to speed up the prototyping process. I could be printing one prototype, and since I don't have to watch the printer, I could already be designing another prototype. 3D printing has many advantages versus other alternative ways of making the mask. For one, using digital software allows me to create precise shapes that will work the best for what I am trying to create. Additionally, 3D printing is relatively fast and efficient, considering how long it would take to create anything by hand. As you can see in this video, my 3D printer is able to create exactly the shape I need for the mask. This video also shows one of the roadblocks that our group faced. As you can see, the printer is struggling to create a consistent first layer, and this translates to an inconsistent surface on the print. Thankfully, since our group would only be using the 3D printed part for the frame of the mask, this didn't matter all that much. Overall, I did come across several failed 3D prints. Whether it was the material not sticking to the print bed, or a flaw in my design, these failed prints took up a good portion of the overall time that it took to print a successful model. One of the files even became corrupted for whatever reason. As you can see in this picture, there are circles that overlap this 3D print part. These circles were nowhere to be found in the design, and I have no idea as to how the print came out this way. Additionally, due to the pandemic, establishing reliable communication with the team was nearly impossible, which slowed down our abilities to seek help and work on the design with each other. In the end, we were able to create a normally functioning prototype.
Masks can be used in a variety of different settings. The first setting is in workplaces such as factories and wood shops that can produce dust and other particulates that get into the air, which can get into someone's lungs, which can harm them. The next use is in scientific research in 2 different places, in the labs or on site. In labs, they can be used for 2 different things, to either protect the user from something they are working with, or to protect their experiments such as a bacterial culture from germs getting into it from their mouth. On site, it's mainly used to protect the user from their environment, such as volcanic ash, if they're at a volcano, if they're in a cave. It can protect them from biohazard waste from bats or other creatures. In geysers, it can just protect them from the smell. Things like this, masks are used to help protect the user. They're also used in war and in the military, mainly to protect either the people using the weapons in order to prevent them from using it on themselves, or to protect the people who it's being used on from the chemicals getting into the air and getting into the lungs and usually causing death. The last use is to protect others or yourself if someone is sick. Masks can help reduce the amount of germs that you emit from your mouth by catching some in the guard. The next is if someone else is sick and producing germs into the air, it can help reduce the amount that get into your body